Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. So this week we're on the Gare and Karuna Tilaka. We'll do a bit of the readings first, and then some grammar, I think, and then back to the readings. We finished the first lot of readings, and we start on further readings this time. And on the grammar, we will be picking up on the agreement of adjectives. The classicists and indeed the modern linguists among you will all be well familiar with agreement of adjectives. Right, so what I will do then, we'll go to at Scare and Karunatilaka, further readings 1. I think you should all have that, and then I'll call it up on screen in a moment. Oops, where are we? Here we are. So we start this one with Naham Bhikkhave Anyam Ekadhammampi Samanupassami Yo Evan Saddhammassa Sammusaya Antaradhanaya Samvattati.
Sorry, which page are you on?
What was that, Judy?
Can you just say which page you're on, please, in the book?
Okay, which page am I on in the book? I was taking that not from the book, but from my analysis. The page in the Garen Karunatilaka book is page 11.
Thank you.
Which is for further readings 1. However, my strong advice is that rather than following in the book, you follow in the analysis of the text that I have done.
Okay.
Do you have that readily available?
No.
For any of you not to have the analysis that I've done readily available is rather like, the paratroopers ready to jump, and one of them saying, "Oh, I forgot my parachute."
Okay.
Okay, not quite as serious as that, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
You should have access. Let me share screen and call it up now. Share. Do you see my text here? This with further readings 1 in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Have you ever seen this document, Judy? It's the Garen Karunatilaka text.
Yeah.
But I've done my separate analysis and breakdown of it with references.
Okay. No, I've been away for a few weeks, so I'm a bit out of touch. So sorry, I've got a bit behind.
Okay, right. What I'm going to do is I'll make a note I'll email it to you separately, but it's there. It's you have my study resources guide.
Yes, I'll be able to look it up. Yeah, thank you.
It's the hang on, is the link? No, it's of course it's not linked in there because it's a Word document. It's in my Google Drive.
Okay.
And also it will have been among the documents that I emailed to you all, so not only a link to my Google Drive, but also attaching it as a separate attachment to emails that I've sent.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry, I haven't caught up yet because I've only just got back, so I'll look that up. Thank you.
Not to worry, Judy. You're going to have so much fun catching up with everything. I envy you the position you're in. So much to learn.
Right.
Don't worry, Judy.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So go back to this. So Naham Bhikkhave Anyam Ekadhammampi Samanupassami Yo Evan Saddhammassa Sammusaya Antaradhanaya Samvattati Yathaidam Bhikkhave Pamado. Pamado bhikkhave saddhammassa sammosaya antaradhanaya samvattati. Um, na samanupassami. Anupassati, a word that a couple of us have been giving special attention to over the last few days, appears in the Satipatthana Sutta as the person who is meditating samanupassati. Sorry, just that was there, just anupassati, certain things. It is the passati, just means to see, with the prefix anu, that means either along or following. It suggests orderly, regular, mental following, or, primarily it meant a physical following. Anueti, anu goes, just means follows. So an orderly mental following of something here, an orderly seeing, and it has been translated as something like anupassati, closely watching, carefully looking at. That's anupassati. Now we've got a prefix sam in front of us, in front of it. Samanupassati, here in the first person, samanupassami. So if anupassati, passati to look, anupassati to consider carefully, examine closely, watch closely, the prefix sam often has the sense of a successful conclusion of something, a completion. We're using it in English the entire time without realizing what we're doing. We use it in the very word of, did any of you just notice me using that same prefix with the same meaning in a common English word? Yes, Simon.
Completion.
Exactly. Thank you, Simon. What's the difference between pletion and completion? Okay, pletion doesn't exist as an English word, but let's make it exist, because it should. It's from the Latin word pletus, meaning full. And we have plenus and pletus, and from plenus, plenary, French plein, and so on. So pletus just means full. But completus, okay, I'm talking about Latin now, but this applies exactly to Pali and Sanskrit, so it's worth looking at. Completus, pletus, okay, it just means full as opposed to empty. Completus focuses on the fulfillment, the accomplishment of the goal, the achievement of it, the completion of it. So yes, it doesn't make, to put com in front of pletus doesn't make whatever it was any more full, but it focuses on that there's been an effort to get there, a process, and the process is now done. Done is what had to be done. The work is done. Mission accomplished. So samanupassami has that same kind of meaning. So samanupassami means I'll observe closely, looking at it one by one to examine what's happening. Samanupassami is the culmination of that process in reaching a conclusion, reaching a decision, a conclusion following analysis. So it's making your finding about it. So that's the force of samanupassami. So I do not, O monks, okay, we can rather weakly translate as conclude or determine that there is or detect or something like that. I do not, O monks, samanupassami. Anyam ekadhammampi. Anyam, other, eka, one, dhamma, here in the very broad meaning of phenomenon or thing or state. It's more of an observable phenomenon. So I do not, O monks, discern any one single, even one single phenomenon. The force of the pi here, that's the Sanskrit api, means even. So I do not discern even one single other phenomenon. Which, now before we can go on to the rest of it, here we've got naham, which is shufa na aham, not I. Note in particular here that if in English we say, I do not detect, that is the negative form of a sentence, which would be, I detect, I do not detect. If we in English were to say, not I, and then proceed, then we're suggesting that I don't, but somebody else might. We're specifically negating the I of it. In Pali, and same applies in Sanskrit, it is not so. You can just aham samanupasami, I detect. Naham, na aham samanupasami simply means I do not detect. It doesn't mean I'm not the one who detects it, but somebody else does. So it can be a little bit confusing if you translate it literally. The words literally one by one are not I, but in fact it simply means I do not. So I do not, O monks, detect or discern the existence, or I cannot discover by analysis the existence of an other anyam ekadhamampi, even one other phenomenon, which yours just which and used in the same way as the English which here, which so leads samvattati. Samvattati is etymologically identical, both in form, well, almost in form, but certainly in meaning, to the Latin conducere, in English to conduce, samvattati. So in English, in Latin, it's sorry, retract that. It is identical in meaning to conduce, but in fact, it's etymologically a pair with convert, samvattati convertere in Latin. But to convert in Latin and then in English has come to have a slightly different meaning. But in Sanskrit and Pali, samvartati, Pali samvattati, it means to conduce or to lead to result in, but conduce, which so conduces to what? The samosaya antradhanaya. The samosa is the kind of generally kind of bucking up, disappearance, falling away. And antradhanaya, disappearance. Note these are both datives, the aya, samosaya, antradhanaya, that's conducive to. So I know of no other single phenomenon that is so conducive to the loss and disappearance of the true Dhamma. Yathaidam bhikkhave, as this, O monks, namely pamado. Simon.
Is the mo bit of samosa related to moha? So the confusing or the forgetting or losing thereof.
In fact, it's from the Sanskrit root or Vedic root mrish. It's more actually cognate, it's likely to be cognate with our English word miss, as in wrong, as a misdeed. It possibly cognate with that. I'm just going to, so let's just examine this a bit. It's, we have a musawada, false speech. It's that same mus and samosa. I'm just calling it up here. Do Here translators are confusions. Samosa. Oops, lost. Come on. Here we are. It's samrisha. So it's the mrisha in Sanskrit becomes samosa, samrisha, and it's the same as I said as the musa. So I'll just call up now the other one, the Sanskrit. Williams. Oops, sorry, got a. Um, okay. See, the root meaning of marish, forget, neglect, disregard, and so on. So it's a letting it go from one's mind, but neglectful, and then by extension has come to mean, well, in Pali, as in musa. It makes an adverbial form in Sanskrit, mrisha, and an adverbial form in Pali, musa, mean doing something forgetfully or neglectfully, and then by extension. Yeah, welcome, Krista. Then by extension, just wrong. So musavada, often translated as false, but anything that's kind of wrong, badly done.
It's a very charitable view of lying, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, they're because a direct accusation of lying, it's interesting you should say that. I mean, a direct accusation of lying is actually a very serious thing to make. And in fact, it's regarded as unparliamentary language. And that's why when Winston Churchill, in one of his speeches, wanted to accuse somebody on the other side of the house of lying, that's why he invented this wonderful expression that he's being economical with the truth. So all these ways of getting around things, like musavada is one of them. Krista, did you get the email I sent with the missing document? Okay, jolly good. Okay, thanks, Krista. Moha, by the way, is etymologically I know maybe they could have been parallel roots in a dim and distant stage of the language, but certainly we should be regarding them as two different separate things. And you can see that there is a certain kind of overlap. It's the mind not being, firmly and correctly there with something. Musam Mrisha tends to have a more specific meaning. More has just general delusion as an overall condition that the unenlightened mind suffers. And then moha are identical there in Sanskrit and Pali. So back to where we were. Let's go this round. So I do not see any one phenomenon that leads so to the neglecting and disappearance of the Dhamma as he could have said yata pamado as pamado, but yata the idam is somewhat pleonastic here. Often yatayidam pamado as this, namely pamado. So it's pleonastic, doesn't really alter the meaning of the sentence. Pamado. I think you're all familiar with the word pamada. Is there anybody? Actually, no. I'm not going to ask you. And because in fact it so happens that Simon was there with me. We've just been on a retreat of Samatha people, and I just put out. And I'm sure you're all fully familiar with the word pamada and apamada. And I got quite a few blank looks, not from Simon, but quite a few blank looks. Oh, are we? And It's actually a doctrinally and for the Dhamma, it's a central key word in Buddhism. If I were to be invited to cast a vote on what the single most important one word in the whole of the scriptures was, I would say it's appamada. It's the opposite of pamada, which is appamada. Sanskrit pramada and apramada, non-pramada, so Pali pamada, appamada. My justification for choosing that as arguably the single most important word that the Buddha ever uttered in his entire 45 years of teaching is this, because it was the last words that the Buddha spoke were Vayadhamma Sankhara Appamadena Sampadeta. So Vayadhamma, of the nature to fall apart, are Sankhara, compounded things. Appamadena Sampadeta. Sampadeta is basically striving to making it happen, strive to accomplish, often translated just strive. So those last two words, appamadena sampadeta, are commonly translated something like, strive on with diligence. Though, of course, that doesn't catch the full force of it. So appamadena, instrumental form, appamada, it would have been the Buddha's very last word before he died, save that even as he lay dying in his last moments, he observed the rules of Pali grammar and syntax and put the verb last. If he'd been following an English word order, appamadena would have been his very last word. So sampadeta, appamadena, strive on with diligence. So this appamadena is how the Buddha, his very last word, the one word that he used to tell us how to lead our lives, appamadena, with appamada. That is my justification for my vote as to why this is the single most important word that the Buddha ever said. It was his parting shot to us. So it was we went to sorry, Jeremy, come in.
Yes, I just wanted, and the word pamado, so the opposite of the word used in the final words of the Buddha. I mean, that seems what negligence. Is that the sort of how you would or is that the direction of its meaning?
That was the direction of his meaning. I hesitate to say yes because I've been asked as a lawyer. I'm asked that question by another lawyer. Where of course negligence is a very specific meaning, the way Jeremy and I use it. But broadly speaking, in a mental sense, yes. And it's often translated as something as heedlessness.
Right.
It's the kind of opposite of sati sampajanya, of mindfulness and clear comprehension.
So sort of carelessness, perhaps, or something like that. As well.
These are. I'm going to start shooting you down in a moment, Jeremy. I think that we can have yes, okay. I'm not going to shoot you down. I do not challenge any of the English words that you've used, save to say that, as so often happens, we've encountered this again and again, that these are just partial glimpses of the underlying meaning. The root actually, at the root of this pamada, and I've done a full note of it. I think I've referenced it in fact, I've done a fairly full note on it in my explanatory glossary, as indicated by it appearing there with the double colon space pamada. That's the reference to the explanatory glossary. It's from a root, mud, M-A-D, which has the idea of kind of an exuberant joy to the extent of intoxication, getting carried away, kind of whoopee, go for it, kind of, you forget your mindfulness. You come from your still mindful center and you're propelled by this exuberant joy or chasing after something into the periphery outside. And so that's why it's often translated as heedlessness. It's a dropping of that sense of, stillness, seeing, the clear comprehension, the mindfulness, not simply rushing after sense desires. Pamada is the opposite. It's rushing after them like that. It's sometimes translated as an intoxication, not not in a kind of physical alcohol intoxication kind of idea, but the mind getting flooded by this desire to rush after something. The same, by the way, will happen with a rush of anger, ill will, any kind of ill feeling towards people. It's that same phenomenon occurring. Um, query whether it's in fact cognate with our modern English word mad, which is kind of loss of mental ability. Ultimately, it's the loss of your watchfulness and control and wise action, mindful action. So appamada is broadly the same, covers a lot of the same ground as sati, though approaching it but from a negative aspect. With your sati, Sanskrit smriti, literally remembering, you've got your mindfulness, and the pamada, rushing after things, is what happens when you lose your mindfulness. So apamada is not exactly the same as sati, but it's just the negation of the consequences of losing your sati.
I just wonder if another translation of appamada would be with vigilance, whether that would strive on with vigilance.
Yeah, it can correctly be translated as vigilant. Oh, another one, it's often translated as diligence as well. Though diligence doesn't quite cut it for me, because diligence is like concentrating carefully on your work and attending to your duties diligently. So you've heard me say again and again, these words are all very good if we can various potential, they illumine various potential or actual aspects of the overall meaning. But let us not get stuck on the translation. I thought the entire purpose of all of us being here is we're feeling the Pali and understanding the Pali from the inside. So, by the way, antradhanaya, antradhana, meaning disappearance, it's the same root as dha that we get in samadha, to concentrate, in the noun samadhi. This is antradha, placing inside, as if something is being hidden inside another. Antara, cognate with the Latin inter and interior, placing something inside, or something being placed inside something else, is the word used for being hidden away or disappearance of it. Siddhamasa, of the good law, let none confuse this with another word. Saddha, why has got Mr. The word saddha, sorry, why has got fallen down. Saddha, the word often translated as faith. This is nothing to do with that. This is saddhamma, the saddhamma, the sat dhamma, the good law. Just call up iPad for you. There we are. is the prefix. Oops. The prefix, not a prefix, it's part of a compound. It's the combining form of the present participle of as, meaning to be. And then by extension it means good. So the Saddhamma is the good law. Some of you may have heard of the Saddharma Pundarika Sutra, which is a Mahayana Sutra, the Sutra of the Lotus of the Good Law, the Saddharma. Sad is often used as a prefix, just meaning good. Some of you may have heard of the Sadguru, who does a lot of podcasts and videos and things. He's that rather jovial fellow with the big beard who goes around on a motorbike and is very, very, very good at driving and does say some very profound things as well. He calls himself the Sadguru, the good guru. It's from the root as, meaning to be, which is an irregular verb because it very often drops off its first vowel. That's why you get, for example, as and santi, meaning they are. Santi, they are identical in Sanskrit and Pali. Curiously enough, we see exactly the same phenomenon in Latin, where we get the verb esse, meaning to be, and it makes its third person singular sunt. They are. So this is these are Latin forms. So as santi esse sunt. Santi, they are, and then it makes its present participle stem form sant, combining form sat. So far so good, that is regular. Now that word just means being, that which is. That's its original meaning. And then by extension, it has come to mean that which is true, that which is good. We have the phrase from the Hindu tradition, which Simon will quote for us in Sanskrit, because I heard you quoting it a few days ago, Simon.
You didn't. You always keep saying that I did the Sanskrit course. I've never done any Sanskrit at all.
You may not have, but I heard you saying this expression a few days ago.
What was it? Sorry, what's the question?
Satchidananda.
Satchitananda, yeah.
You did say it, didn't you?
Yeah.
You did. Do you want me to analyze it for you? So, in Sanskrit, Satchidananda, Ananda, is Sat plus Chit plus Ananda. Sat, Chit, Ananda, we're looking at Sanskrit now, which then by Sandhi, the T and the Ch becomes a double Ch, and the Chit plus A, the T changes to a D before a vowel, so Satchidananda, often translated as being, consciousness, and bliss. So Sat here just means being, the quality of being, Chit, the quality of consciousness, the root originally meaning light, and it's where we get our word chitta, and ananda meaning joy or bliss. We have this wonderful chant in Sanskrit, asato ma sadgamaya, from the untrue lead us to the true, or from the non-being lead us to the being. So Asata, that's the ablative form. Sat being sata, from that which is, asata, from that which is not, or from the untrue. So asato ma sadgamaya. Well, this is Sanskrit, very, very close to what it would be in Pali. Ma is just an alternative form of mam, in Pali, mam meaning me. From the untruth, gamaya, lead, ma, me, sad, to the truth. Or that from the unreal, lead me to the real. So this sad has this broad range of meanings, all ultimately deriving simply from that which is the sat, the being. And as I say, by extension, it means good. The Saddharma Pundarika, the good law Lotus Sutra, Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. So here we're seeing it in the form of the Saddhamma, the good Dhamma. So Pamado Bhikkhave Saddhammassa Sammusaya Antaradhanaya Samvattati. Again, this is just saying the same thing, but cast in a different order of words. So Pamada, O monks, Samvattati, conduces to, leads to the neglect and disappearance of the good law. The next line, up again. The next line is actually pretty much identical, or is identical, save that certain keywords are replaced by other keywords. So, Naham bhikkhave anyang ekadhammampi samanupassami yo evam saddhammassa titya asammusaya antaradhanaya samvattati yathaidham bhikkhave appamado. So it's basically saying the same thing with the opposites or the negations of the words in the previous line. Appamado bhikkhave saddhammassa titya asammusaya anantaradhanaya samvattati. This titya is from the root. Tell me, somebody, what root is titya from? It's from our root sta, to stand. And here, the literal meaning of titi is standing. I'll explain in a minute how we get to titi from sta. The original meaning of the root is standing. And by extension, it means remaining in place, permanence, steadfastness. It doesn't budge. It stays there. So the staying, and our word stay is from that same root as stand. They're both from that same primitive Indo-European root, Proto-Indo-European root, sta. So coming back to the root sta makes its past participle slightly irregularly. If it were regular, we would expect to see stata, as in jna, jnata, jna, jnata. No. But it doesn't make that. It actually changes the long a to an e, so stita, means stood. It's the past participle. It's used as an active. As you, in English, in slightly non-standard English, I was stood there instead of I was standing there. So stha makes in Sanskrit its past participle sthita. In Pali, the st becomes a t, so tita, stood, and it makes one of the forms of the verbal noun quite frequent, where instead of you take the past participle and change it ta to ti, and that can make it's one way of making a verbal noun. So sthiti is then a verbal noun meaning standing, and by extension, permanence, steadfastness, staying power. And that's the one that becomes in Pali titi. By the way, these nouns, verbal nouns ending in a T, are almost invariably feminine. So here we have now the dative. Let's look at the Pali dative there, which is the same as the genitive. So titiya, so conducive to the permanence, to the staying power, the long standing of the Dhamma. So that's where we get the titiya. The next two words in the text are simply the asamosaya and antaradhanaya. These are the same two words we've just been looking at, samosaya and antaradhanaya, simply negated, asamosaya and antaradhanaya. As this amongst appamado, as non-pamada. Appamado bhikkhave saddhammasatitya asammusaya anantaradhanaya samvattatiti. So perhaps we could have a couple of recitations of that before moving on to the third line. So going then in the order in which you appear in my gallery, and that, Keith, is the consequence of being the first to log in. So you are first in my gallery, Keith. So would you like to recite this? Just these three lines here for us.
I'll have a go.
Please do.
Lahang bhikkhave anyang ekadamang hi samanupassami yo evang sadammassa sammusaya antaradhanaya samvattati yatayidang bhikkhave pamado bhikkhave Sadhammassa samosaya antaradhanaya samvattatiti.
Thank you, Keith, with admirable attention to doubled consonants and longs and shorts. And you you slightly faltered on just one in Sadhammassa the first time round, but you got it dead right the second time round. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Keith. Shri Animala, would you like to have a go for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Naham bhikkhave annam ekadammapi samanupassami yo evam saddhamassu sammosaya antradhanaya samavattiti yatayidam bhikkhave pamado bhikkhave saddhamassa samosaya antradhanaya samavattati.
Okay, very nice, Shrinimala, but just antaradhanaya.
Antaradhanaya.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you, Srinimala. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I love hearing this Sri Lankan style pronunciation coming out, and we'll hear it again in so many Pali chants that are available on the internet, the Sri Lankan pronunciation. One notable feature, you'll notice that Srinimala pronounced the final a of these as more of an Sadhamasa Samusaya Antradhanaya with a very short neutral vowel. In northern India, it would be more of an a, not a long a, but an a, more distinctly pronounced as an a, but short. This is just it's no more than a regional variation. That's how it's done in Sri Lanka. In fact, in modern Sinhala, that is how the final short ah is pronounced. So, for example, the word for bala in northern Indian pronunciation, you hear bala with more of an ah sound, whereas the Sinhala speakers would pronounce it, Srinamala, pronounce bala, but in a Sri Lankan way. Bala with that short sound.
Yeah.
That's right. It's simply a regional phonetic variation. It doesn't have the slightest effect on the meaning. Right, Judith, would you like to have a go for us?
Yes, okay. Naham bhikkhave.
Hang on there. That has to be long. It's two shorts that making it's naham, which then merge together, becoming naham. So pronounce it distinctly long.
Naham.
Yes, that's it.
Anam ekadamampi samanupasami yo evam sadamasa samusaya antaradan Danya Samvati.
Antaradhanaya.
Antaradhanaya Samvati. Yata yidam bhikkhave pamado. Pamado bhikkhave. Sadamasa samosaya antaradayana samvatiti.
Okay, just have another go of this antaradhanaya.
Antaradhanaya.
That's perfect. Also remember, when you pronounce this pamado, in English, because we tend to put, pamado, the stress would be pretty much on the middle syllable. But where we have in English phonetics, the stress on one syllable followed by another syllable, we tend to shorten the vowel in that syllable, pamado, but although it's unstressed, it's still long. So pamado, pamad. They're actually, if you measure it with one of these voice time measurers, they are actually of equal length. Mado, pamado. Pamado, yeah. And that will become particularly apparent if you do any group chanting. Because if you mix up the longs and the shorts, you'll find you're one beat out from the rest of the group. So we can have another one before we move on to the second verse. Let's have Judy. Would you like to give us a recitation of this?
I'll have a go. Yeah. Nahang bhikkhave anam ekadamam pid samanupasami yo evam sadmasa samusaya antaradhanaya samvatati yatayidam bhikkhave pamado bhikkhave sadamasa samusaya antaradhanaya samvatati.
Okay, there was just pick up and pronounce this word again.
Yeah, I don't know. Anam.
No, anyam.
Anyam.
Yeah. It's the tilde, which is just done as a convenience because it's given to us in Spanish. It's the ny sound. So and it, of course it's doubled. In fact, it's always doubled in Pali if it's between two vowels of anya, anyam.
Anyang.
Anyang, yes. Also, can you say this word again? But here we've got three doublings. We've got a double th, a double m, and a double s. So say that word sadhamasa without being shy about the doubling. Sadhamasa.
Sadhamasa.
That's much better. In the previous one, I noticed a bit of a samosa, a fading and neglecting of the of the doublings. Also, an undue shorting of the vowel. They are all of the vowels here. They're all a short a. But the fact they're all short doesn't mean that you swallow them. They've got, although they're there, they're short, but they are there, and they've got to be given their full value, however short. So sadhamasa, rather than saying sadhamasa or something. Sadhamasa, all distinctly there. If you hear Hindi speakers pronouncing Sanskrit, you will often find them in many circumstances that short a will just drop. In fact, it always drops at the end of a word for Hindi speakers. But it's I generally try to follow the Hindi pronunciation as likely to be closest to the way it was pronounced back then, but not to fall into the modern Hindi trap of the frequent dropping of an intervocalic a. Anyway, there we are. Say once more, Judy. Sadhamasa.
Sadhamasa.
That was perfect. You see, that came out beautifully.
Thank you.
Judith, can we just go back to you for one moment? Can you pronounce that also with great correctness and clarity? Sadhamasa.
Sadhamasa.
Okay, so Judy and Judith, you both got that absolutely perfectly now. That's excellent. So we'll move now just to have a recitation of this second paragraph. I'll just read it once through first. Naham bhikkhave anyam ekadhammampi samanupassami yo evam saddhammassa titya asammusaya anantaradhanaya samvattati yathaidham bhikkhave appamado bhikkhave saddhammassa titya asammusaya anantaradhanaya samvattatiti. I've just noticed an error there. There's a double M, saddhammasa. Oops. Saddhammasa is the correct form. One, two, three. So, Sarah, would you like to have a go at reading this one? And if you can, there's the T with the dot under it, as you know, is the retroflex da, and it's here retroflex and aspirate, so ta, titia, titia. And it's a bit of a tongue twister because we start off with the retroflex aspirate t immediately after the short e, followed by the dental non-aspirate, so ta to ta. So to the ears of speakers of certainly the northern Indian languages, especially the Hindi speakers, there would be a very sharp distinction t and ta. If you hear Thai monks chanting, they tend to blur the distinction because that same distinction doesn't exist in the phonetics of Thai. But it's a distinction that it's not absolutely vital to do it, but I just err on the side of following as best we can, the way the Brahmins chant the old Vedic chants. Anyway, over to you, Sarah.
Okay. Naham bhikkhave anyam ekadamampi samanupasami yo evam sadamasa titya asamosaya antaradanaya samvatati yataidam bhikkhave apamado. Apamado bhikkhave sadamasa titya asamosaya antaradanaya samvatati.
Right. Say that I don't know if you noticed, but in both of those occasions you missed off the first un. It's antara.
Antara.
Anantara. The way you said it gave it the opposite meaning, because the an negates it. Antara dhanaya, disappearance. Anantara dhanaya, non disappearance.
Okay.
Also, it's really just a matter of regional variations. But I noticed you had a bit of an English O there. Try and make it this O sound. O. Apamado.
Apamado.
You see, you can do it. That was very good. You can do it. It's quite funny to hear, for example, so English people who don't speak Spanish very well saying "Yo quiero vino." I want wine. Quiero vino. Oh, they say yo, not yo, but yo. Yes, it's that same o sound. Okay, very good. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, can you just one other thing? Can you just pronounce this most difficult word again? Titia.
Titia.
Yeah. Pronounce also with a long R at the end. Titia.
Titia.
Okay, that was good. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So what we'll do now, we'll have a recitation from Jeremy. Possibly fit in Simon before we have our break.
Naham bhikkhave anyam ekadamam pi samanupasami yo evam sadamasa titya asamosaya anantaradanaya samvatati yata idam bhikkhave apamado bhikkhave sadamasa titya asam Osaya anantaradanaya samvatati.
Okay, very good, Jeremy. And I noticed that you immediately spotted and corrected the fact that the R that I've highlighted there you accidentally made short, but you immediately spotted it and went over and over it again. So say anantaradhanaya.
And could I just check again the titia? You said the first T is more like a D, is it then?
No, it's a retroflex. Da. You know, when you hear, say, Indians who've learnt English in India, it's that characteristic da sound that they use. So this it's unvoiced. It's a da, not a da. It's unvoiced and it's aspirated ta. So in fact, in even in modern Hindi, you have the da, ta, and da. So you've got that's substantially the same sound, voiced, unvoiced, the da and da, and aspirated and non-aspirated, ta, da. So this is the aspirated, unvoiced retroflex, ta. So I say, if you find it difficult, don't worry about it too much. The Thais have been carrying the Theravada teaching forward for millennia, and they don't quite get it. It's just my own pedantic tendency, almost like try and veer towards how it's likely to have been pronounced by in the time of the Buddha, and still is in modern India or modern northern India. Okay, would you like just to recite it then? Thank you, Jeremy. Simon, to recite it, and then we'll have our break.
Naham bhikkhave anyang ekadammang pi samanupasami Yo evang saddhamassa titya asamosaya anantaradanaya samvattati yataidang bhikkave appamado bhikkave saddhamassa titya asamosaya anantaradanaya samvattatiti.
Okay, that was very good indeed. So thank you. And what we'll do, we've just gone for 4 o'clock. So we'll take a 15-minute break, and I will see you all again in 15 minutes.
And break recording.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I will pause the recording. Thank you. There we are. I'll do that bit again. So looking at Garen Tilaka grammar, page 10, item 7, near the top of page 10. Agreement of adjectives. So adjectives agree in gender, case, and number with the nouns that they modify. And the examples given: kusalo dhammo, the good doctrine, masculine nominative singular. Akusala dhamma, unskillful phenomena, unskillful states, or doctrines here is put, but states here would mean. And the example given is chittang adantang. There are 2 misprints in the following English. First of all, it says subdued mind, and it should be unsubdued. By a misprint, it should be placed in the negative, unsubdued. And also neuter nominative. Of course, that should be accusative. Of course, just an obvious typo there. So accusative singular. Note here, it's a matter of vocabulary rather than grammar, that the translation is given as subdued, unsubdued. Remember, this is from adantam. It's from the root dam, meaning to tame. So adantam, untamed. Now just observe here that I think that this unsubdued is actually a slightly misleading translation. If you subdue something, you kind of push it down. Kind of an idea of crushing it. Whereas the use of the verb dam, to tame, is actually quite subtle, and it's well chosen, because you aren't destroying something, you are taming it. And we see here the imagery, or my understanding of the imagery. I'll welcome any comments from you. So I'm just stop the imagery of taming, as in taming a wild animal. So when you are taming a wild animal, the same as when you're taming the untamed chitta, the untamed self, you aren't subduing it. As if you tame a wild animal, you aren't killing it. You are, first of all, you are making it non-dangerous, and secondly, you are actually able to use its strength or skills, its abilities for your own benefit, as when you're taming wild dogs, for example. Something that was uncontrolled, dangerous, by taming it, you actually you remove its danger and you make it useful to you. So that is the imagery that I see here with the chitta, that we have this the chitta, the heart mind, this occasionally wild and unsubdued thing that leads to ill deeds and dukkha. That you don't kill it, you tame it, you use its great brightness and strength to good ends. Jeremy, please.
Well, on that, you have these Zen drawings, don't you, of the bull with the owner of the bull.
Yeah.
And it
That's right.
starts off as black, and then it's gradually tamed, and then it ends up as white, and that's the taming of your own mind.
Exactly so. So exactly. I mean, you aren't killing it. You are, you are bringing it up to a higher level and bringing it into your service. Exactly that imagery.
James, can I ask,
Yeah, please, Christopher.
what's the word to tame? What's the verb?
The root is dam, D-A-M.
D-A-M, okay.
And it's directly cognate with our English word to tame.
Right.
Our tame is directly from that ancient root. And also the Latin domus is from that same root.
Right, okay.
Domus meaning a house, and we talk about a domesticated animal. So it's all from that same root to tame, root dam rather. Let me just call up. Let me just share screen again for a moment. Oh. We have the root dam. It's a class 4, so it takes a y after it. And oops, what have I done? Sorry, oops. Oh, called up something wrong. Sorry. It's slightly irregular because it lengthens the So you'd expect to see something like damati, but it's damyati. But that's a feature of Sanskrit. Don't let that detain you there. So it's a transitive and an intransitive. So it can mean to be tamed or tranquilize, or to tame, subdue, conquer. Okay, so it can mean subdue or overpower, yes, but the primary meaning is taming. So as I was saying earlier, the meaning I think is the more appropriate one when we talk about the dantan chittang and the adantan chittang. So back to the grammar. Let's stop. It says, note that although adjectives often precede the noun that they modify, the opposite order is possible, as in the last example. So in some languages have fairly strict order of adjectives and nouns. I mean, in English, we typically or as a matter of regular syntax, we put the adjective first. For example, in French and Spanish and Italian, they typically, though not always, put the adjective after the noun. Latin allows either. Greek tends to put the adjective before the noun. Sanskrit and Pali, generally speaking, it's the same order as English, but it's not quite as rigid. The word order is more flexible. And in modern Hindi, for example, follows the same order as English, adjective then noun. So the standard order in Sanskrit and Pali is adjective first and then noun. But he makes a comment here that I agree with. So where we have the adjective after the noun, adjective is often derived from a verb, and there may be a special sense like that in English. The mind untamed leads to great harm, means the mind when it is untamed, or when the mind is in a state of being untamed. So we could say in English, the untamed mind leads to great misery, or the mind untamed leads to great misery. There's a slight, they're saying substantially the same thing, but a slight difference of emphasis there, meaning the mind in an untamed state, or the mind when it is untamed. And so that it's the same kind of idea in Pali. It doesn't alter the meaning, there's just a slight difference of emphasis and tone. And the last line here, the agreeing endings for adjectives will be given later. I don't know why he says that. I'll explain that comment in a moment. For the present, we simply note the agreement. Endings of adjectives on page 5 we had that. We've got our standard table of declensions for the nominals, that's nouns and adjectives ending in a short a. Adjectives are declined in exactly the same way. It's the same for those of you who know Latin. You get an adjective as an adjective of a certain declension. Nouns and adjectives of a given declension will decline in exactly the same way. It makes no difference whether it's a noun or an adjective. Unlike Russian, if any of you know Russian, where there's an entire separate set of endings for adjectives, but that does not apply in Sanskrit and Pali, or indeed in Latin and Greek. So if you get an adjective ending in an a and a noun ending in an a in the stem form, they will say, no, kusalani chittani, adantani chittani, kusala dhamma, and so on. So the endings will be the same. And the same applies to nouns and adjectives ending in a short e, which I think we deal with those in the next lesson. We deal with u in the next lesson, and then we go on to e. So you get nouns ending in a short e, and adjectives ending in a short e will decline in exactly the same way. So there's no separate effort of learning there. So any questions arising out of this section 7? It should be fairly straightforward. So number 8 is just the accusative of destination. Verbs of motion, destination regularly in the accusative. So in English, you talk about going to a place, going to town. So in English, you would say, I'm going to the town, I'm going to town. In Pali, you would say, nagarangachami. Just put nagaro, nagarangachami. Just put it in the accusative. That's the accusative of the destination, the place that you're going to. And we see this in our well-known Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, where we've actually got two adjacent objects of destination. I go to the Buddha, Buddhang Gacchami. I go, in English we'd say I go for refuge. In Sanskrit and Pali you say just I go refuge. Saranang Gacchami. Sanskrit Sharanang Gacchami, Pali Saranang Gacchami. Here we've got those two nouns in apposition. I go, in English we say I go to the Buddha for refuge. In Pali just I go Buddha refuge. You could also construe it as Saranang Gacchami is almost like a compound verb, almost like a compound verb. Saranang Gacchati, to take refuge in. And then with the accusative of the person or thing in which you're taking refuge, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Note also, by the way, we have the accusative of motion, whereas in English we'd use the preposition to, you're going to somewhere. It's the same with verbs of saying or speaking. In Sanskrit and Pali, you tend to use the accusative of the person that you're speaking to, rather than, say, a dative that you would use, for example, in Latin, or in English, you speak to somebody, you say something to somebody. In Sanskrit and Pali, you just use the accusative, both the accusative of the thing said and the accusative of the person to whom it is said. So you get two accusatives governed by the same verb. Joining in series. It's item 9 now. So in any queries or comments arising out of that section 8? Should be fairly straightforward. I can't remember whether it was anyone in this group. I have had it observed to me. Wouldn't it be better to say Buddhang Saranaya using the dative Gachami? I go to the Buddha for the purpose of refuge. Okay. It's not what we say. We've got, the standard chant Buddhang Saranang Gachami. It wouldn't be wrong to say Buddhang Saranaya Gachami. I go to the Buddha for the purpose of refuge. I think it would be, although it's not the form of words we use, I see no grammatical or syntactical objection to those words. It would slightly alter the emphasis. It means I'm going to the Buddha. Why are you going to the Buddha? For the purpose of refuge. That would be more the meaning if you said Buddhang Saranaya Gachami. But here we have what I said is, I think, almost a compound verb, saranang gacchati, to take refuge in. And you will have seen, hopefully even remembered from the analysis I did of the very first line in lesson 1, which is Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, that Saranai means a lot more than refuge, like the sword of the spirit being protected. So more than refuge, it's more protection that gives you strength. Simon, please.
Well, I can't remember when we did that first bit, but could the Buddhang and Saranang just be in apposition, like the Buddha as refuge?
Yeah, I think you could take it in one of two ways, or maybe possibly one of three. I think my first inclination had been just to treat them as in apposition. But then I thought, well, actually, it's not really quite accurate to talk about in apposition, because when two nouns are used in apposition, they should have the same parallel syntactical function in the sentence. So we don't use it anymore on our coinage since 1947, but in the old coins you had the name of the sovereign, and fidei defensor Indiae rex or regina, fidei defensor Indiae imperator. So these are in apposition: defender of the faith, king, defender of the faith, emperor of India. So these are three expressions that are syntactically parallel. Just further nouns expressing the same thing. Here, they don't, as I said, I'd initially felt inclined to say they are in apposition. I now feel slightly less inclined, because Saranang Gacchami has more like taking refuge in. It's almost like a compound verb. I feel it almost like a compound verb. So close to being in apposition. I can't condemn it as being wrong. It's just my over-nigglingly pedantic part of the mind slightly says not quite apposition, but close enough. But you certainly can treat it in that way.
What was the third one then? You said there were three ways of looking at it. So apposition or accusative of motion, and what's the third one?
So the accusative of motion was the third one. The second one was treating them as a compound verb. Saranang gacchati. So apposition or compound verb, or just two separate accusatives of motion. So does that deal with that query satisfactorily, Simon? Good. Don't want anyone thinking I'm evading the question. So the next one then, conjoining in series. Items in a sentence or even whole sentences may be conjoined simply by giving them in sequence without any cha or any other English equivalent of and. So The example given, some more light. Kusalanam dhammanam pitya asammusaya bhavaya vepulaya. So this is a series of 4 datives for the pitya asammusaya bhavaya vepulaya of skillful states. You could put cha there perfectly correctly. Cha either after all 4 of them or after the last one of them, or omit cha entirely. I mean, we can do it's a matter of style, and we can do the same in English. You can say, "I am appalled, shocked, astonished, dismayed." You can just join these. Without, you could put an and there, or you could put an and before the last one. It's a matter of style. And again, in the second example, Chandanjaneti Vayamati Viryam Arabhati. So we've got 3 verbal expressions here. Chandanjaneti, you could say Vayamati cha Viryam cha Arabhati. You could put the cha there. So there's no rule about it. You can put, mostly you would put in the cha, often you don't. The cha is more frequently omitted where the sequence of things are more like emphatic synonyms or virtual synonyms, one for the other. So it's not as if you're just listing items A, B, and C. It's you're giving a string of items of roughly the same meaning by way of kind of rhetorical emphasis. And so by leaving out the and, you're almost drawing attention to the fact it's just repetition of near synonyms for rhetorical emphasis. Just as the example, I am dismayed, shocked, and astonished. You can, I'm dismayed. Dismayed is one of the things I am, and shocked as well, and a third thing as well, and astonished. So if you said the and, you'd be separating into three categories. But what we're doing is you're just using these kind of synonyms just for rhetorical emphasis. And if you look at these 2 examples given, again, they are separate words and they do have their separate meanings, but they're kind of parallel, overlapping meanings, all pointing in the same direction. In the case of Pitya Asammusaya Bhavaya Vepulaya, they are different words with differing meanings, but they're all, as it were, within the same bag. They're all emphasizing the same point of the keeping and developing and enhancing of the Dhamma. Sarah, please come in.
And does Pali have punctuation? Do they use commas?
No, they don't.
Right.
That was invented a long time afterwards. In fact, if you look back to the ancient Greek and ancient Latin inscriptions carved in stone, punctuation is not used. That's a fairly recent invention. And if you read the Rock Edicts of Asoka, written in the Brahmi script, not a comma to be found, not even a full stop. Not even, I know, shocking, not even a full stop. And but later on, you had a bar in Sanskrit verse. And in fact, even in prose, you had an upright bar to mark the end of a sentence or the end of a line of verse. But that's a much later invention. You just had to work it out. Jeremy, come in.
And in Pali, sort of as originally written, were there spaces between words? So, for example, in Thai, there aren't. Everything is run together.
That's right. No, there weren't. If you look at the old Brahmi script and the rock edicts of Asoka, you just had to know, just had to work out. It's the same if you look at in ancient inscriptions in Latin. The oldest ones, they just run it all together, and you just have to know. Often the grammar will tell you because a certain thing added to a word that has to be the end of a word. It wasn't always like that. It just relied on you knowing. And the same with the ancient Greek inscriptions as well. So yeah, I did actually make an effort of some years ago actually of learning to read Thai, and it can be rather awkward, can't it? The way they don't the way they can run the words, whole long groups of words run together.
Well, yes. Well, I read some Thai, so that's exactly the struggle you've always got. If you lose you lose your way, you sort of
get
a word wrong, whatever.
And Tibetan, they can run everything together, but at least the Tibetans put kind of a dot between syllables. However, although that is a slight help to put the dot between the syllables, they still don't distinguish the words. So you might get three syllables together in Tibetan. Okay, the syllable dot, syllable dot, syllable dot. Sometimes, if you know Tibetan, do the first two go together, then the one, or vice versa, one alone followed by the two. So these devices to aid comprehension that seem so obvious to us now, it's amazing that with all the human ingenuity that we found 2,000 and more years ago, they hadn't worked out this simple way of doing it, little punctuation marks. Simon, you were about to say.
Yeah, I was just about to make the point that a good example of not having the punctuation is the fact that when we would have quote marks, they have to rely on saying thus. So that's why we get T after.
Exactly so, yeah. So that is exactly a right point, Simon. However, their ingenuity stopped short of marking the opening of the quote. So the T marks the end of a quote. But I mean, normally it's clear enough where the quote starts, but sometimes it isn't. And there can be an ambiguity of what words are being actually quoted and what words aren't. I can't think of any offhand, but there have been cases where it's been a bit of a struggle to find. Often there is an ambiguity. Where does the quote actually start? So, Krista, were you going to make a point?
Yeah, I'm going back to words in the same case.
Yes.
Two nouns in the same case. And if there's an adjective, does it depend entirely on word order, which noun that qualifies?
That's a very interesting point, You can get a circumstance where you get noun, adjective, noun. Where there could be an ambiguity whether that adjective qualifies the one going preceding or the one following, or possibly even both. Vadasa kusalasa dhammasa. Yeah, there could be, I mean, you just have to tell by context. Even a native speaker would just have to tell by context, which is meant. Ambiguities could arise there. I'll try to remember to spot in any examples as I can, but the point is that interesting point that Krista has raised, that because the word order between nouns and adjectives is not fixed, usually adjective plus noun, but it doesn't have to be that way. The order in which they occur is not the end of the story. So I think the answer is, if you just look at the words on their own, there could be an ambiguity. Noun, adjective, noun, all in the same case, same gender number case. Does the adjective qualify the one before or the one after? It could be either, and you just have to work out from context which it is. I'll see if I can spot any examples. If any of you pick up any examples as you go along, kind of raise them next time. It would be interesting to look at them. So, was there any more arising out of item 10? So, at the risk of overloading your brains, I think we'll come back to compounds as well. We'll just look at the compounds here. Compounds are I could describe them as tricky, and I don't think that would be too much of an exaggeration. Compounds can actually be very tricky and ambiguous. What actually is meant by compounds? What? For example, let's just look at a dvandva compound. A dvandva is simply a word meaning a pair. It's where you can say A and B. But in a dvandva compound, you can miss out the and. Let's take an example from the Itipiso. Anuttaro deva manussanam satta. So how does it go? So, goodness me, I've chanted it 1,000,000 times, and I'm trying to remember the exact words. Come on,
I've
somebody.
got it here.
Go on then, Sarah.
Just from Itipiso Bhagawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vija Charana Sampanno Sugato Loka Vidu Anuttaro Pursadhamma Sarati Sata Dewa Manusanang Buddho Bhagavati.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was right. Satta Deva Manusanam. That is teacher, Satta, of Deva Manusanam. That is a dvandva compound. It doesn't mean god men. It means gods and devas and humans. It could be given as Devanang Manusanang Cha, which is what it actually means. Satta, teacher, Devanang, of gods, Manusanancha, and humans. Deva Manusa, in the plural here, Deva Manusa, genitive plural, Deva Manusanang, means gods and men. So this is what's known as a dvandva compound, where you put two words of equal syntactical value, gods and men, two separate items. So if you now look back at the earlier words that you heard Sarah reciting, Vidya Charana Sampanno, it seems clear enough, but there is actually an ambiguity in there. Does anyone want to tell me what the ambiguity is? Vidya, knowledge, Charana, conduct. It's full knowledge and good conduct. What is the ambiguity in Vidya Charana Sampanno? Well, the ambiguity is that a dvandva compound? or is it a determinative compound? A determinative compound is where the first member of the compound determines the meaning of the second member of the compound. In case that sounds a little bit abstruse, you get a ticket machine. Okay, you get a machine that can be any kind of machine. What kind of machine? A ticket machine. Okay, that's a determinative compound because the first word ticket determines limits, specifies the second member. What kind of machine? A ticket machine. So, Vidyacharana could be a determinative compound, which would mean that his charana, his conduct, is characterized or determined by, full of vidya, knowledge. So conduct informed by or guided by his vidya, his knowledge. That is one legitimate interpretation. The other interpretation is that it's a dvandva compound. He's sampanno, endowed with vidya charana, knowledge and conduct, right conduct. If you just look at the language on its own without any further clues, you cannot tell. It could equally be either. There's a legitimate case for saying either. I think generally it seems to be interpreted as endowed with knowledge and conduct, meaning higher knowledge and correct conduct, but it just doesn't have to be that. And in fact, I would go as far as to say that in the minds of native speakers, they could even almost blend both meanings in their minds simultaneously. Simon, please come in.
In terms of its form, could Deva Manusanam be a Tapurisa, so teacher of the men belonging to the god or belonging to God's men?
Teacher of divine humans or godly humans.
God's got, like, in the humans, a man's horses, like the men of God.
Yeah, Deva Manusanam, the godly men, the men of God. Linguistically, the answer is yes, it could. If you just look at the shape of the word as it stands there, the answer is yes, it could. It could equally be, rather like Vidyacharana, it could be a dvandva compound, just A plus B, or a determinative compound. Whether there has been any attempt to justify an argument one way or the other, I have to say I'm not sure. So one thing, is my screen shared at the moment or not? No, okay, fine. So it was meant to be. Okay, you've just thrown yet another spanner into the works of my mind, Simon. A very useful spanner. They're always very useful. It could be. It could be either.
I've got a priest in the background at the moment, if it helps.
Sorry, is that? Well, I can see a doggy in the background.
The Reverend has just walked past behind me. So
okay, right. Was the Reverend Priestess, High Priestess Harriet, going to cast any light on it for us?
She seems to have run off.
Okay. As soon as she heard you mentioning her. So yeah, my inclination is to think of it as gods and men, and I think that is how it has generally been interpreted. But I would welcome contrary ideas, and secondly, I would say that from the pure shape of that expression, you cannot tell just by looking at that expression on its own. You can't tell.
Given that that's what he actually did,
given that he was the teacher of devas and humans, yes. And also, you see, if you say he was the teacher of divine humans, I mean, he did give teaching to some pretty dreadful characters, and often to good effect. So his teaching was even directed at the evil, who are very often converted to goodness by hearing the teaching. So I would say to treat it as a determinative compound, these deva-like humans, actually, from the point of view of what happened, is to narrow the definition of Manusanam, because he was teaching all kinds of devas and all kinds of humans.
Yeah,
So
I think it obviously wasn't. I was just semi-maliciously referring to, God's creatures, as in the creatures of Prometheus or something like this. Children.
It's always worth throwing these things in. Don't want to let my or let any of our kind of mental sankhara get too fixed. It's always useful to have them shaken a bit. So. We've just looked at two examples now, Deva Manusanam and Vidyacharanas and Vidyacharana Sampanno, of how compounds can be ambiguous. And you can get ambiguities in English as well. I mean, there's nothing particularly difficult about Sanskrit compounds if you compare them with English compounds as well. You just intuitively we know the meaning of a compound by logic. So a ticket machine is a machine that sells tickets. A foreigner might say, therefore a car park is a park that sells cars. No. Not, it doesn't work quite as simple as that. Or a railway station is a station that sells railways. No, so you often know just by intuition what the compound means. One's intuition occasionally breaks down, and you do get ambiguities in what type of compound it is, as we've just been discussing, Deva Manusanam and Vidyacharana. In fact, Vidyacharana Sampanno, endowed with, having acquired, possessing, is a compound of three words. So he's Sampanno, endowed with. So endowed with what? So Vidyacharana Sampanno is a determinative compound of which the second element is Sampanno, and the first element consists of two words, Vidyacharana. Then you make a further breakdown. Take Vidyacharana, what kind of compound is that? Dvandva or determinative? So you get compounds forming parts of larger compounds. So to determine then what is the relationship between Vidyacharana and Sampanno is easy enough. So anyway, it's Sampanno means endowed with what? Vidyacharana. Now take the two words Vidyacharana, there the ambiguity can endowed with knowledge and good conduct, or endowed with the good conduct informed by his knowledge or created by his knowledge. You get compounds within compounds. And you can get quite long strings of compounds as well. The same as you can in English, but more often than not, it'll be possible by logic to break them down. So looking at the examples given here, so itti saddo, a woman sound, the sound of a woman. So purisarupam, man form, the form, the shape, the appearance of a man. And again, there shouldn't be any particular difficulty in working out just by intuitive logic what types of compounds that these are. And we also have possessive compounds, for example, where the shape of the compound will often not tell you, well, mostly not tell you what it is. Again, you know by logic. You talk about, say, often in English we use it, we give it in a past participle form, a two-wheeled vehicle. Or even just a two-wheel vehicle means a vehicle that has two wheels. You can talk about a redhead. And a redhead doesn't mean a head that is red. It means a person who has red hair. So that's a redhead. We talk about somebody being blue-eyed or long-haired. And that's a possessive compound. It's also known as an exocentric compound because it means the person, the adjective, the personal thing referred to by the adjective is outside the expression itself. So when you talk about a redhead, you are not talking about a head, you're talking about a person who has a head that has red hair on it. So you get the same kind of phenomenon, you just know by intuition what it is. And in English, we differentiate also by stress. If you talk about a red head, a head that is red. Where if you talk about a redhead with the stress on the first syllable, that's the equivalent of a possessive compound in Sanskrit. You'll get used to it as you go along. So note that the first member of a compound is regularly in the stem form. And you all know what we mean by roots and stems now. Where you get a compound of several nouns, normally it's only the final one that will decline. You occasionally have departures from that rule. We have the word adi, meaning beginning, madhya, meaning middle, and pariyusana, meaning end. And we have that expression that occurs numerous occasions in the scriptures that the Buddha taught the doctrine that is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end. And it's the Dhammam Adi Kalyanam, Madhye Kalyanam, Pariyusana Kalyanam. What do you notice there? Adi Kalyanam, that is in the stem form, and the last one, Pariyusana Kalyanam, that's also in the stem form. What do you find in the middle? You'd expect to see Madhya Kalyanam. In fact, it's Madhye Kalyanam. That is one of the rarer cases where a non-final member of the compound is declined as if it were not a compound. So you would have expected to see Madhya Kalyanam, but it just turns up as Madhye Kalyanam. It just does. Jeremy?
Yes, I was just sort of trying to puzzle through, just going back to that Dewa Manusanam. So that then is an example where the first member of the compound, i.e. Dewa, is then in the stem form.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and then but the stem form could also be Dewa, couldn't it? Because you've got two alternatives. It's a masculine noun ending in A. You've got either A or R, long A. Yeah.
So in what sense? So the long R would be the plural.
Well, it is the plural, but isn't it? I thought in the alternative for the vocative singular, you can either have a short A or a long A in the masculine nouns ending in A.
Yeah.
I'm cheating, James. I've got a table in front of me.
Okay. Have you got a table in front of you that says you can have a vocative ending in a long R for a short R?
Yes.
Okay, right. It's one of those cases, Jeremy, where you get grammar writers of grammar books, who they've got all the known forms, all the permissible forms that have been found in the literature, and they list them one after the other. And so the unsuspecting student will say, the vocative can end in long deva. What many of the grammar writers fail to warn you is that for every one case of a vocative in a long R, you'll get 1,000 in the short R. So in fact, the vocative in the long R is rare and exceptional, and is slightly misleading on the part of grammar writers to say, well, these are alternative forms. Well, kind of, yes, but of a ratio of 1,000 to 1, or whatever the number is, I don't know. But it's actually pretty rare to find a vocative that ends in R.
And the other thing I noticed was it says that the stem is usually at the same as the vocative singular.
Where does it say? Oh, it's stem.
Right at the bottom of page
For
10.
masculine neuter nouns, this will usually be the same as the vocative singular. I'm half inclined to say strike that sentence out, delete that sentence from your book. Okay, in most cases it will be. But in most cases, the vocative singular form is the same as the stem form. Nara Buddha, He Buddha, O Buddha, He Ananda, O Ananda. So in most cases, it will be. For masculine and neuter. Okay, so for masculine and neuter nouns whose stem ends in a short a, then that comment will almost invariably hold good.
But not for all the other masculine.
No, because, for example, in stems ending in e, a short e and u, you have a vocative ending respectively in a and o. So that comment has been thrown in there, and it's not particularly helpful. The writer might have been having a bit of a he might have been late on a Friday afternoon, and he was getting a bit sleepy, but it's pay not too much attention to that. And he has a note at the end here. Then this text, compounds will be given as such only if their meaning is not directly deducible from their parts and the context in which they occur. Okay, yes, I mean, very, very often it's obvious what is meant. But sometimes it's not obvious. And I think this is just done as a device to save space in the book, actually, to reduce the number of words in the book, not explain the compound if it's obvious. For example, if you talk about the Buddha Dhamma, actually come to think of it, Buddha Dhamma, could even be a dvandva compound, the Buddha and the Dhamma, but mostly you think of it as the Buddha Dhamma, meaning the Buddha's Dhamma, the Dhamma as taught by the Buddha. Where you get a compound like Theravada, for example, elder teaching. So it's just obvious there's only one thing that can mean, is the teaching of the elders. Buddha Vachana, Buddha Vachana, speech or words. Again, there's only one thing that it can mean. Rather the same as in English, and most compounds, even to a non-native speaker, will be perfectly obvious what is meant just by pure logic. It goes on to say this: Ittisaddam and Ittirupam are given, since they also have the special sense of the word woman. Okay, right. So the beauty or the good form of Ittirupam, Ittisaddam can only mean one thing. Okay? Saddha means word or sound generally. Rupa can mean just form, or it can also mean beauty. So it's just saying it will be given here if there is an ambiguity. It goes on to learn to recognize compounds by looking up their parts, or not even necessarily looking up. In many cases, you will already know them and just intuitively know what they are. Yes, and then it goes on to say this is an important skill. That bit I do thoroughly agree with. It is an important skill, since compounding is very frequent in Pali. And in some kinds of texts, very long and complex compounds are to be found. You do occasionally find, for example, that this happens a bit in Sanskrit much more commonly than in Pali. And when you just get poets, for example, who are being just deliberately over clever by fabricating overlong compounds and just, deliberately mucking us about and making it difficult for us to understand just to show how clever they are. That tends to occur more in secular Sanskrit poetry. It tends not to occur in the Pali canon, because I think that in our Buddhist scriptures, nobody was deliberately trying to muck us about by making it difficult, unlike some of those secular Sanskrit poets who were. I don't want to go on record as saying that any of them tried to make it difficult. So, we were just coming up to a quarter past 5. Oh, hang on. Did I resume the recording? Oh, I did. I've had this moment of panic. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I had this moment of panic. I'd forgotten yet again.
Can I ask, actually, in the
Please,
chanting
Sarah.
book, where they have words joined by hyphens, are those really single Pali words?
Ah, you see, we're back to the question about did they have punctuation? The answer is the hyphenation is given as an aid to us poor struggling foreigners to understand. The hyphenation does not exist in Pali and Sanskrit. Even where they write, as Pali and Sanskrit, except when it was written by Thai. Now, hang on, even when Thais write Pali and the Thai script, they do separate the words. They don't run. I think that I'm right in saying that, Jeremy, that if you see a Pali text written in Thai, they don't run the words together as they do in native Thai. They do separate them as they would in Sanskrit and Pali. So back to Sarah's question. If there is a compound word, it would be written all as one word in the native scripts without any hyphenation there. In fact, in many of the texts that I've analyzed and edited for you, for example, if you look at the one that we've recently been doing, my analysis of the Karaniya Metta Sutta, you will see that I've set out the text firstly in Devanagari script. Not that Devanagari script is associated with Pali. I just did that because our dear old friend Mariano asked me to for the Sanskrit students, and as Mariano Marchigali, to assist the Sanskrit students by having a bit of extra Devanagari for them to look at. But then what I've done, the second box where I've set it out in Roman script, there's no, have I done it like that in the Karaniya Metta Sutta? I know I've done it in the Sanskrit text. So I've given one version that exactly reflects the way it's given in Devanagari, without any word break, without any hyphenations, and then a next one putting in the hyphenation. But this is done purely as a device in the Roman script only to aid foreign students.
Well, I know we'll come on to it, but I've always been fascinated by in the 5 precepts, the Surya, Marya, Maja, Pamadatana. Is that all one word?
It would be written as one word. It's treated as one compound. So it's one samasa. In fact, the Sanskrit and Pali, saying, well, for a compound is a samasa, literally throwing together. Compound just means put together. Pali and Sanskrit thrown together. So it would be kind of treated as one word, but as a compound word, one word. Okay, treated as one word, and for the purposes of writing it on the page, would be written as one word, even though it be recognized that you can break it up into separate elements. Is in our chanting book, I think it's written with, is it written with hyphens?
Yeah, the whole thing is written with hyphens, and
okay.
Different people pronounce it differently because you've got to sort of take a break, haven't you, as you say it? I just wondered if there are any rules for where you take a break.
Okay, you have to take either you take a break in the middle of it, or you take a very deep breath before you start. So you get to the end without a fresh breath. Sura Merya Majapamada Tana. Okay, I did that all in one breath. I was careful to take a lungful before I started. Sura Merya Majapamada Tana. Normally, you would not be expected to stop in the middle. I'm not sure if that's an absolute rule. Sura Merya Majapamada Tana Veramani. Yes, so there would be a slight natural pause after Pamadatana, but it would be pronounced as all one word. And the hyphenation that you see in our chanting book. So if you saw that written in Devanagari or in the Thai script, for example, or in Sinhala, Srinimala, Sura Merya Majjapamadatana, would that be written as one long word?
Yes, Suramere Majjapamagatana Vedamani
Okay. So the Suramere Majjapamagatana would be written as one. Okay, fine. Yeah. So fine. Okay, we've got that. In Thai, they would do it because it's treated as one word for the purposes of writing it, and pretty much for the purposes of pronouncing it as well. In the Devanagari script, was mostly associated with Sanskrit, and of course modern Hindi and other languages, but Sanskrit, say, the hyphenation would not be put there. So they are separate words. They are in the stem form, apart from the final one, Sura, Merya, Majja, Pamada, Tana. So they've got Sura, Merya, Majja, Pamada, are 4 words all in the stem form, and Tana, the final one, only the final one is declined. That's in the ablative. So when you say, is it all one word? The answer, well, how do you define a word? By a writing convention, it's treated as one word, though when you analyze it, you break it down into separate words. And that's the Pamadatana. Pamada, the word we were discussing earlier, because these things, these intoxicants, are the Tana, literally the place, and therefore the occasion of something, the place that it can happen, of Pamada, because taking these intoxicants leads to Pamada. To use the vocabulary of the Roman Catholic faith in which I was brought up, they are the occasion of sin, the circumstances in which you are tempted into committing a sin. So it has literally the Pamada place, the circumstances or the occasion in which Pamada can arise. Simon.
So presumably the state of intoxication.
Yes. Atana means, of course, it's the cognate with the Latin word station or stand or standing statue. So yes, it would, and indeed state. Yes, it. Do you know? Maybe it's because of my dim and distant Roman Catholic upbringing that I thought of this occasion of sin, and came into my mind, which is how I'd interpreted it. But yeah, you could equally validly say either. Remember that the word Tana, from the root sta, it's sthana in Sanskrit, just means a place. It's the same word that turns up in Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, the place of the Afghans and the Uzbeks, so on, that same stan. It primarily means a place, then it means a state or a condition. But it does also mean the possibility of something arising. So if you talk about, you can say that you can say in Pali, and I think in Sanskrit as well, that there is no pana for that to happen, meaning there is no possibility of it happening. It just doesn't happen. No occasion for it to happen. So I think in this one, the pamadakana, it could equally well be either. I tend to interpret it as the occasional, the risk of something arising, the place for it to arise. You're creating the conditions in which pamada can arise. But again, that's just my own particular mental sankharas that are giving this interpretation. Others may have equally valid ones. And again, as so often happens, it could mean both at the same time, and native speakers might have held both meanings in their minds at the same time. So we've come to 5:22. And I will thank you all for joining me. I've enjoyed the session very, very much. So I will see you again in 2 weeks from now. But I did mention, and Simon also reminded me, I was looking at the numbers attending and whether we could kind of, at the moment, I was saying, well, can the Tuesday people attend on a Tuesday and the Saturday people attend on a Saturday? Otherwise, it'll just be too crowded. We've now got just me plus 9. So I think we'll just we'll review then at the beginning when we're into the new year, and it may well be that I'll say we'll just turn up as and when you can. But to just see what happens to the numbers over the next couple of weeks. I know that there are some of you who would like to be able to attend both times. And just what do you wish for? Do I wish for the numbers to drop off so we can abolish the distinction? Or do I wish to more people, as many people as possible, to be learning Pali, in which case you would have to maintain the distinction. So we'll see what happens at the beginning of the new year. Okay, so thank you all for joining me, and see you next time round. Thank you. Bye. Goodbye. Bye then. Bye.
Bye.